To understand the Eagleton fiasco of 1972, you have to understand that in 1972, everybody was basically just raw dogging mental illness completely unmedicated. There were just like only a few options as far as actual medication for mental illness. There was no SSRIs. There was no Zoloft. There was no Paxil. There was no Prozac. There were no like small serotonin boosting sort of drugs. There were just like these hardcore MAOIs, um, a few antipsychotics, and things like electroshock therapy. And that meant that when people were struggling, they often had these kind of intense hospitalizations for things that nowadays would actually just be, and we did 6 months on Zoloft, right? So that's the context. And Eagleton is an example of before we had real medical screenings happening for people running for high elected office. So McGovern doesn't actually want Eagleton to be the vice president. He has offered it to a bunch of other people and they've all said no. And finally, like literally, like the day of, he's like, "Hey, Eagleton, you want to be it?" And Eagleton's like, "Yeah, sure." And doesn't mention that he had 3 hospitalizations for depression like about a decade before. And during those hospitalizations, he had had electroconvulsive therapy. The other context piece is that this is in the middle of the Cold War. And while we still have people in high office, the president and theoretically the vice president, very quickly, having access to the nuclear arsenal, this was much more new and novel. And it was like front and center in everybody's minds that whoever you were putting in the VP slot needed to be trustworthy with these weapons. And people still had a lot of stigma surrounding mental illness. But Eagleton didn't mention the mental illness history while he's getting put into the position. And within a couple of weeks, it comes out. Suddenly, everybody's talking about it. It's on part of every newscast. And McGovern talks to the doctors, and the doctors say, "Look, there is possibility that this comes back. This is not necessarily a cured one and done." And they decide to pull the plug on Eagleton being the VP, which means that within 18 days, he's out of the running because of this history of depression and treatment for depression. Eagleton ends up serving 2 terms as a Missouri senator, does just fine, everything's fine, but McGovern's race was pretty much sunk over this, both because it kind of unsettled the race and because a bunch of people who were on Eagleton's side were really uncomfortable with the fact that he'd been canned over it. It was just a fiasco all around.